Hi, my name is Karina Okudal. I'm the managing editor of Canadian Auto Dealer magazine. I'm here with Jeremy, the president and CEO of PureCars, a company based in the US that also extends into Canada. Now, I'm curious to know a little bit about what the situation is for auto retail in the US, but also we're going to talk a little bit about some important keywords, sort of Google search terms that dealers, whether in the US or in Canada, should consider amid this pandemic and also post-pandemic. So on to you, Jeremy.
Yeah, we see the recovery on its way here in the U.S. Big country, so we're seeing different things in different places. There's definitely geographical impact. We saw as the pandemic accelerated, dealers were deemed essential here in the U.S. in almost all states for service. It varied for selling cars. Most states allowed dealers to sell cars, but there was some restrictions of how it was done with appointments, etc. We've seen dealers adapt very quickly. Dealerships are the pillars in their community. They're exceptional entrepreneurs, and they really took advantage of, they'll do whatever it takes to get through this. And with that, we saw online ease of the transaction accelerate. So not necessarily a complete e-commerce experience, but if a customer wanted the vehicle delivered to their house for a test drive, it was available. If the customer wanted to walk around with a sales rep on FaceTime, which may have not been done before, it was now available. We saw dealers doing more Zoom and other things of that nature. As a result, if we look at our sales data, it's dealers in some cases are selling as many or more cars than they did pre-pandemic. We saw some concern around used car prices, thinking that demand would be reduced with supply getting stagnant with people being at home. We've seen quite the opposite. Surge has happened with used car buying. It's actually gotten difficult to find good used cars at auction right now, and dealerships are selling used like crazy. So I was recently on the phone with a dealer. There are 140% used car sales compared to prior year same period when they're looking at the last 2 to 3 weeks. So very, very positive on that front. When we were looking back at the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009, we saw that sales dip and service became their gold mine. This was their opportunity to have good outcome. And in this case, we saw service take a bigger dip than sales in most cases. And the brands that got hit the hardest were the luxury brands and those that service an older customer base, which if you think about it, it makes sense. If this terrible virus impacts older people, worse off, then those people are more likely to stay home and less likely to act on an oil change light, where those servicing F-150s and Silverados and trucks that are used as a tool potentially for their jobs and also generally draw a younger buyer than, say, a luxurious Lexus, those people serviced at a higher rate. Depending on the area, we've seen today, as I mentioned earlier, hard-hit areas like Massachusetts, the Boston market, New York, parts of New Jersey, sales have not come back, but they are rebounding. If you look at the Southeast and the Midwest, sales have come back in a big way with many stores near pre-pandemic or exceeding pre-pandemic levels. So I'm hopeful this trending will continue into the Canadian market. We as a company have far more dealers in the U.S. than we do Canada, since we were founded in the U.S. in Charleston and in Atlanta, Georgia. With that, our Canadian dealers, it varies. Unfortunately, some of them were hit very hard and are shut down, as you know. Temporarily shut down, that is. They plan on reopening as government allows.
Right, indeed, depending on the province, but it seems to be progressing anyways at this point now that we're in May. So your company released also findings about Google search terms that were important for dealers to consider. Now, you mentioned very briefly when you were just speaking that online was sort of an interest for consumers, and there's a lot of research that points to online being a preference for consumers, at least at this point. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about some Google search terms that are kind of showing more interest among consumers and in the different categories, whether that's in general or new, pre-owned, and so on.
So we as a company have always taken the approach, you have to lead with data. And in a pandemic, when a day feels like a week and a week feels like a month, you have to really figure out how do you quickly convert highly relevant data and turn it into valuable information that guides you. We took thousands of our dealerships, made swift action. We saw that Google search was performing differently. We saw a huge surge in users on social platforms like Facebook, and we were shifting budgets to social in a big way, and it paid big dividends for our stores. With that said, as social distancing has been released, we continue to see great success on social. We're seeing more and more success on search. To directly answer the question on search trends, we're seeing more and more queries around oil change near me and related queries to car repair. These things is expected. Vehicles were still driven, although in hard hit areas, they were driven less if you look at gas receipts, but they were still driven. There was massive pent up demand for servicing, and you're starting to see terms like Jiffy Lube and Jiffy Lube near me and Walmart oil change and Walmart near, service near me, et cetera. And for us, what's interesting is as you look at these terms, it just continues to kind of do the obvious. The consumer didn't fade away. A vehicle is the second largest purchase they make. With that comes a lot of research on the buy side and quite a bit of research on the service side. Now we see those micro moments much shorter on the service side, so it's absolutely critical to capture it. We've seen our dealers capture it successfully with paid social campaigns and really doing everything from incredible video ads on YouTube and other platforms and dominating search, but thinking about search in a much tighter geo, lower funnel approach, as search has always been the glue across the consumer journey. But as more and more people are reluctant to leave their home, whether it's government order or just feeling less safe going to retailers, search traffic continues to soar. And with that, you're just seeing less and less conversion into the showroom, whereas social has performed exceptionally well. And our analysis of that is with social platform and with video, you can make your messaging far more compelling and educate the consumer as to all of the key things the dealership is doing for social distancing to make them feel safe and secure as well.
So it's interesting. I was thinking about asking you why this is so important for dealers, but you pretty much, you gave a good answer for that. I mean, dealers that have so many things that they need to put their attention on, and we're talking about outside of COVID-19, the idea of really boosting their online presence. So Google search or search in general is one of those things that they really need to focus on, is what you're saying, or that they should actually consider putting their intention on during this period and also post-pandemic maybe.
Absolutely. When we look at the most successful dealers in the country, they're massive spenders on paid media, on digital. Where when I started this business 12 plus years ago, the majority of ad spend was traditional. Today, that would be an anomaly, and most progressive dealers are spending the majority of their budget on digital. The pandemic really changed the game. We saw behavior shift in a very big way, as I mentioned earlier. And with that, I think a balanced strategy is wise. You don't want to get off of search. You just want to tighten down the geo and focus on that lower funnel for your used cars that you need to move, for filling your lifts in the service department, and capturing as much of the bounce on the way up. Social and video have performed exceptionally well as the pandemic accelerated and continue to do so. So those remain key strategies for us here at PureCars.
And I guess outside of search, or is there anything else that dealers can do to really boost their prospects, whether around the search arena or even outside of it?
It's a great question. So today we find paid media on Facebook to be incredibly effective. Facebook has publicly released their traffic continues to rise in a big way. You can buy that media for less than pre-pandemic rates as some marketers pulled back ad spend. So it's creating a great buying opportunity for dealers to take advantage of that. We're seeing similar trending on the video side, and combined with search, good things happen. And here in the States and our dealers in Canada, service has ultimately always just run, and a lot of dealers have not focused on their digital media for their service department nearly as detail oriented as they had on the variable ops side of the business. And we're seeing that change. Being that service was hit very, very hard in the pandemic, It's critical for the dealer to win the customer, and digital advertising is the way to do it. You got to get shop capacity as a dealer back to near 100%. And when you look at Google search term for Jiffy Lube near me and other independent service shops, it's critical for the dealer to win that customer and do whatever it takes to do that. That's from building confidence in their social distancing and how safely they can touch a vehicle without any viral spread risks. Price comes into the consideration. And this is an opportunity for the dealer to win this customer that is looking for an independent service facility to do an oil change and other quick service related things, get that customer back in and keep that customer for life.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for taking the time to do this interview. And I wish you and your family good health and safety, and I hope things continue to improve in the US.
Same to you, and I'm confident they will in Canada as well. Thank you for having me.